We'll just go live and then we'll start the session. Great. I think we're live now, so we can begin. First of all, I would like to welcome all of you, our panelists, our moderator, and all our attendees to Onward and Outward, the Future of Immigration from India. This is a webinar series by India Migration Now, where we intend to explore the big questions around the future of immigration. My name is Rohini, and I'm a research coordinator at IMN, and I would really like to thank all of you firstly for taking out the time for being with us on this first session. Our session today, as you can see, is focused on the future of recruitment. And we have put together an excellent panel of speakers representing different stakeholders within this ecosystem, each of whom are uniquely qualified to comment upon this issue. They will be discussing a number of different questions, including the status of recruitment under current circumstances, how and when recruitment will resume, the key sectors, key corridors, and really how immigration is going to look from India going forward. So we really hope that this will be the beginning of a conversation that helps us not only understand the issues of various stakeholders and account for them, but also actively include them in this future that we are building around immigration. This is what we hope to achieve with this event and with future events. We hope to start this conversation today and take it forward on Monday and beyond. So without any further delay, I would like to introduce our first speaker for today, Mr. Shabri Nair, who will be delivering our opening remarks for this webinar series. Shabri is a very well-known name and face within the migration space. He is currently the Regional Migration Specialist for South Asia at the ILO Decent Work team in Delhi. His work with the ILO has involved him in the formulation of one of the most important international agreements related to migration, the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration. Shabri also has many years of experience in international policy and migration and has held postings in several countries around the world. So with that, Shabri, I'd like to request you to take over and deliver the opening remarks for this session today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rohini. I must ask, like we always do in every webinar now, can you hear me and can you see me?
Yes, loud and clear, loud and clear.
Very good, excellent. Thanks so much. What a pleasure. I feel like I'm running from one thing to another, and really we have moved to your IMN webinar now, onward, and looking at the future, specifically now also coming from a conversation that was organized through the Ministry of External Affairs with the India Center for Migration on Fair Recruitment. So I'm going to try and not repeat a lot of what was already said there. We have some very good panelists in this session who are already there. And I'm sure that, including Mr. Sao, who I'm very happy to join in this very esteemed panel. I've been reflecting specifically on how we can open a conversation now, 6 months or 5 months since COVID has struck us, and a lot of things have changed in that sense. So let me then perhaps be in a much more subdued manner, recognize where we are coming from, and to recognize where we are coming from, I'd like to point out to 4 key issues that I think are important for us to appreciate and understand going forward. The first one is to recognize the fact that majority of our migrant workers now are in very dire situations. Now, if you look at India, the data that everybody talks about is over 17.5 million migrants, plus another 12, 13 million diaspora. So overall, about 30 million people from a population of 1.3 billion. I think we're looking at it in so many different ways. So recognizing those figures and also recognizing that out of that 17.5 million, over 9 million are in the Middle East. And these are the people in the most vulnerable of situations. So for me, the conversation begins in understanding the vulnerabilities, in being able to take that forward while addressing those vulnerabilities. Otherwise, I think we would be looking at issues that may or may not really have an effect to the larger picture, because those are the people who are really the contributors to this conversation. Since the Vande Bharat mission began in terms of repatriating these migrant workers, over a million migrant workers, close to a million migrant workers, have now been repatriated through the MEA coordinated, MEA led Vande Bharat mission. Now, this is very special. The last time we saw such a big group of people coming back, having lost their jobs, was during the 2008-9 economic crisis. But this is special because the 8-9 economic crisis was a crisis that we knew we will get out of, and it was just a matter of time. In this case, it is just a matter of time. We just don't know how long we will be in a COVID situation that will be a part of the new normal. Now, if we look at that, therefore, repatriation and the return and the reverse migration almost of such a big population of migrants is extremely important for us to recognize as we think of the road ahead and the future, and in terms of how we exactly keep that, take that into consideration. The second, reintegration. A lot of these migrant workers are coming back to a wrecked job system, to a system that is almost inexistent in terms of social protection, to a system that does not necessarily provide any kind of solid frameworks, either policy wise or normative in terms of the legal perspectives that can help these people reintegrate. So, therefore, the reintegration of these migrant workers will be very key. Now, if we look at it in terms of South Asia, the region that I cover, there are quite a few countries that have been talking about this. So it's not just India alone. But what makes it special as far as India is concerned is the sheer number. Not just the sheer number of those coming back, but also the movement within the country. So the reintegration, when we talk about migrant workers, most of them now are coming from the North Indian states. A migrant worker coming back to Uttar Pradesh from the Middle East is also going to now meet with a migrant worker that is coming back from, let's say, Maharashtra. So an internal migrant worker and an international migrant worker coming back to the same state, to the same set of issues that they will have to face. And there is bound to be a clash of migration cultures and experiences. So we need to look at the entire reintegration strategy in as holistic a manner as possible. The third, irregular migration. One of the things that we have learned over the last 6 months, and what I would always like to quote coming from the Secretary, Overseas Indian Affairs, Ministry of External Affairs, was when he said that this was the moment over the last few months that we have recognized and seen that a lot of our migrant workers who were irregular have been coming out of the woodworks. Now, this is important. It is important for us to recognize that, because there has, every time when we talk about migrant workers or irregular migrant workers, what is the data on them? We never have that data. We never have those figures. So the amnesties, like the ones that were raised in the United Arab Emirates or in Kuwait, have led to a lot of these people coming from under the woodwork, and us being able to recognize that these people do exist, and that there needs to be a strong understanding of how we move forward in addressing that irregular migration does not necessarily become a thing of the future as well. And the fourth is something that I want to point out to on transitional justice. This is an issue that, when we talk about transitional justice, a lot of the conversations go back to perhaps 94 as an example, when we saw the regime change in South Africa from the de Klerk government to the Mandela government of transitional justice. Transitional justice, in this case of migrant workers coming back, is specifically looking at how they have moved across the corridors in terms of the indebtedness, the debt with which they are coming back, and what kind of justice are we able to provide them to be able to ensure that they can reintegrate firmly in the first place. A lot of these people are coming back with no wages paid. They have had a huge number of issues with regards to what is happening to them with their employers, the trust that they have lost with their employers, the wages that they have lost, and these issues will only exacerbate their return and reintegration process. And therefore, this issue of transitional justice for those whose wages have not been paid will be very, very important. Otherwise, it will only lead us to not perhaps look at that future in a cohesive manner. So, where do we then go with that future? What would be those main points that we need to consider going into that future? I would put it forward in 8 points. These are my 8 points for the future. Number one, decent work at home. Migration, we always say, should be a choice and not a necessity. And if it is by choice, then let's focus on building decent work at home, ensuring that people are undergoing decent work through what we call the 4 pillars of the decent work agenda: productive employment, social protection, social dialogue, and labor standards. I think these 4 issues will be key so that even when migrant workers then decide to leave, because migration will continue, COVID's not going to stop people from moving. And when that continues, people are not moving irregularly, people are not moving by force, and people are moving only because it was the right channel for them and the right channels are provided. So I think that will be my number one point in terms of looking at the future. The second point is the strengthening of the policy and the legal frameworks. Earlier, in the earlier conversation that I was in, we heard quite a few references to the Immigration Act. The 1983 Immigration Act has now uh, come to been revised in a certain way in 2019. It has not yet been tabled, endorsed, and adopted, and I think that would be key now going forward. So the labor standards, the particular policies, legislative frameworks would be very key for us as we go forward. Number three, this is not going to be a single entity-led conversation, whether it is in the government side of things or whether it is in the entire society approach, which means when it comes to conversations on migration, I was very pleased when I remember during the internal migration, during the time when the internal migrant workers were going through that journey of walking back to their homes, Niti Aayog chairman going forward. I remember a government official once telling me that there is not really a whole of government approach, but more a whole in the government approach. So we need to address those gaps. We need to be able to bridge those gaps and plug in those holes. Otherwise, we're only going to find it more difficult. The fourth one is the importance of social dialogue. The whole of society approach brings in the element of bringing that tripartite perspective. The tripartite perspective that includes trade unions, civil society organizations, employers, of course, and the government. So it's a tripartite plus process. Social dialogue would be important for the new social contract that we want to develop for migrant workers and going forward in ensuring that migrant workers are efficiently being able to contribute to countries of origin and destination and for themselves. That's the fourth. My fifth one is to keep in mind the importance of gender, to take in consideration the specific needs that women have. Because if we do not do that, if we do not take into consideration the specific needs of women, and these are not just women migrants, but also women left behind, families of migrant workers left behind, we need to keep that in mind in terms of addressing the issue holistically. And therefore, I would certainly put gender and the gender perspectives as one of my key elements going forward. The sixth, fair recruitment. And and that will be the key of the discussions today. The number of, as I mentioned before, recruitment is not going to go down anytime soon. There will be a lot of recruitment going ahead. People are going to move irrespective of whether there is COVID or not. In that case, what are the elements that we want to look at? We have to look at new labor markets. We have to have better labor market information systems. We need to keep in mind the fact that people need to be reskilled, retrained. We need to have be able to appreciate that data needs to be taken into a better perspective, and that would be key for the building back better that we need to do. My seventh point is specifically with regards to skilling. Skilling is going to be key. You know, the ILO Centenary Declaration talks that was adopted last year in 2019 talks about the future of work, talks about the fourth industrial revolution, talks about ensuring that the fourth industrial revolution is human centered in that sense. And if it is going to be human centered, we need to make sure that the human centered approach will categorize specifically and give priority to the issue of skills development, reskilling, retraining, upskilling, and so on. That will be key because automation is not going to happen overnight. Domestic work is not going to be necessarily done by a robot or a machine. So we need to understand what those priorities are and how people can be incorporated. And my last point is specifically with regards to international cooperation. Migration. This was during the negotiations of the GCM when the 192 governments at the time, with the exception of one, came together to negotiate the Global Compact for Migration. Perhaps the one element that they all recognized was that migration has to be one that is dealt with by countries in a cooperative manner, in a framework that brings cooperation, collaboration, and coordination amongst all stakeholders, particularly amongst the governments. It is state-led, but not state-only. And that keeping those elements in mind, I think international cooperation will be key as we look at the next steps and going forward. But those were some big picture elements, and I'm looking forward to a very exciting conversation today and on the 31st on day 2. Thank you very much, Rohini, Priyansha, and the IMN team for having me here.
Thank you very much, Shabri. I think you've very comprehensively set a framework, set an agenda, and discussed, I think, almost every major issue related to the international immigration scene right now. And I think that's a good segue into the panel that we have today. I would like to just very briefly introduce everybody in a couple of lines, and then I will hand over to our moderator. Today, leading this panel, we have Shri Jayan Kumar Sao, who currently serves as Director and Protector of Immigrants Mumbai with the Ministry of External Affairs. Of course, the POE Mumbai, as we all know, is a very crucial node in the immigration ecosystem. Mr. Sao's office clears over 3 lakh immigrants for travel every year, and they have been very closely involved with the repatriation of Indians in the Vande Bharat missions as well. And Mr. Sao brings a very crucial governmental and regulatory perspective to our discussions today. We also have with us Ms. Sita Sharma of the ILO, who has over 2 decades of experience in the development sector within migration policy. She is currently based with the ILO India team, where she heads the EU-India Common Agenda on Migration and Mobility. And this makes her uniquely qualified really to talk about specifically the India-EU corridor and the potential associated with it. We also have with us 3 representatives from the recruiting fraternity, each of whom bring a very different sectoral expertise and perspective. Firstly, we have Mr. Ashit Mehta, who is managing partner at JM Mehta & Co., a leading RA in operation over the last 4 decades. Mr. Mehta's group specializes in oil and gas, which we all know is an extremely crucial sector, particularly for the very sizable India Gulf corridor. We have Mr. Alijan Rajan, who leads the India operations of Veera International, a leading RA in the hospitality sector. Mr. Rajan has been associated with Veera for over 2 decades and himself has prior experience with recruitment in the Gulf as well as USA and UK. Thirdly, we have Mr. Safwan Yusuf Sheikh, CEO of Al Yusuf Enterprises, and an alumnus of Wellington Management Studies. His group has been operational across a number of important sectors and industries, but Mr. Sheikh today will be focusing specifically on healthcare, which we know is an extremely important one in the world that we are in today. And last, but definitely not the least, I would like to introduce our moderator, Mr. Amit Saxena. Amit is many things. He's an entrepreneur. He heads the Ambe group of companies, including Ambe International and Ambe Electronics. And he's also the director at one of India's largest RA federations, the Federation of Indian Immigrants Management Councils and Associations, FIMCA. He's also an advisor on several government boards on migration, recruitment, and skill development, and he also serves on the advisory board of IMN. Amit has very kindly agreed to moderate our discussions today, and with that, I would like to hand over to him and have us begin the session formally. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you, Rohini, for that lovely and long introduction. I think you got out of breath there. Good evening, everyone, and glad to have you here. We have a power-packed agenda in front of us. The panelists, as Rohini mentioned, are all experts in their field. Between them, they have recruited, I dare say, lakhs of people every year. So you must understand that their perspective is practical. It comes from, on-the-ground reality. We're going to be talking to you not only about policies and procedures. We are also going to be talking to you about where we think the jobs of the future lie, which countries are going to open up, when they are going to open up, what the challenges are that lie ahead. And obviously, being a businessman, we do seek support from the government. So there are some points in which we're going to mention about what help we are looking for. Without much ado, I want to invite Sao Saab. As Rohini mentioned, he controls one of the most important regions of the Protectorate of Immigrants. He is himself a 1995 Indian Telecommunications Services officer. He's actually a technical man, and we are very fortunate to have him as the POE Mumbai. I would invite him to create the opening remarks of our panel discussion. Sausa, please, if you could come in.
Am I audible now? Yeah. Namaste, and very good to have so many participants and so experienced people in this field coming together today. And first of all, I thank IMN for organizing this webinar. And the topic is onward and outward, but I think in the background, a bigger inward is looking forward. So, anyway, but we have to look towards the future. And Mr. Shabri has given a very good insight of the all the perspective of inward migration and how the integration is to be done and all those things. And last 5-6 months, basically, it has been very eventful, and it has touched almost all the aspects of life. And migration has been always almost completely halted. But today, what because I have been participating in so many webinars in the last few months, and what I was seeing missing that it is the pandemic aspect of migration. Somehow we are not touching. We are discussing the impact of basically pandemic in what sectors, how it will open up. But somehow we are not touching the operationalization and the pandemic aspect of the how the processes will change and what processes we need to change, because the time has come. Flights have air bubble flights have started to operate, but still we neither a informal sort of set of SOPs, contactless SOPs, nothing has come up in any forum. So today, basically, I will try to touch upon those points, very practical points, and basically, it is the effect of pandemic on the immigration ecosystem. And post-COVID, what will be the ecosystem it will look like, and how do we try to reinvent the process so that we can facilitate the requirement, because demand is except for few sectors like hospitality, other the demand, basically you cannot say the demand is not there, but if you are not able to fulfill the demand, it will get killed. So basically it's a vice versa process. So we should be basically seeing the holistic approach of immigration, all the aspects of immigration. So I have made few points, and ultimately the government of India goal in the whole process is to regulate in a minimally invasive manner, so that the concept of safe and legal migration comes, and also basically the data capturing of maximum of the migrants is taken place, and so that whenever they are in distress, we are able to help, reach out, and give them the welfare measures available to them as per the government of India. That always remains a challenge. It was a pre-pandemic also to capture the whole migration. We were able to capture a few percentage. Now we are in the new Immigration Act, and all a lot of improvement is being done to capture the whole the number of migrants moving out and in. That remains always a challenge, and pandemic especially throws a new challenge in that aspect also, how to capture. So basically I will be touching upon the ecosystem. So first I will take uh, there is no still there is no collection of there is no informal website also where we can get the information of the current health protocols of all labor exporting and labor destination countries, and it cannot be depended upon. We cannot expect a person to go each and every country's website, find it out, and it is changing very dynamically. So in this forum, majority of the stakeholders are there, formal, informal, NGOs. So I will say that somebody should take a lead and create, because it's nothing, because it has to be collect and basically put in a website. So, and it needs to be dynamically updated. So, what are the home quarantine measures? How many days institutional quarantine has to be done? Because in the last few months, I have seen uh, few instances where the whole basically the objective was defeated when these some of the small procedures was not followed. One of the around 250 migrants were basically stuck at UAE airport. They were about to board a chartered flight, and in the end they were told that one of the permission is missing. Now the whole concept was basically done to prevent them from COVID, but they were stuck there for more than 8 hours, 9 hours. So the whole concept is defeated, and it is all due to the lack of basically awareness and to all the stakeholders. So ultimately, it was 12 o'clock in the night. We were able to find out that one particular permission from India's government of India side, they were asking, it was already there, but it was not basically told to them. So this is one aspect. So I mean to say, if you don't have a full knowledge of all the protocols, uh, either for source country or the destination country, it is going to stuck, and it is not going to go away soon. So you need to have some mechanism where all the stakeholders get updated information of health protocol. So that is one of the most important thing, and we should not expect that somebody formal should come out in some mechanism, or somebody can anyone can take a lead, and we will also help you out in that. And then second point is that uh, chartered flight in the last 2-3 months, around 10,000 immigrants we were able to bring from 7 countries, African countries, Gulf countries, few European countries, apart from Vande Bharat mission, by arranging chartered flight by recruiting agent and foreign employees. That was all free of cost. So it was, so there is no, still there is no what do you call, documentation of all the steps how to arrange a chartered flight, how to book it, what are the processes involved. So that also is one of the aspect that has to be done. And then another important thing, now it is coming after opening, then because international flights have started to open, now the type of visas, now the after pandemic, post pandemic, it is going to undergo a drastic change, because now if you see the visa processes of even Europe or Gulf, Certain type of visas needs you to physically visit certain centers, give biometrics, and employment visa specifically you need to go take a medical or physical stamping of passports. So now whether that all will presently what countries are trying to do, they are trying to do avoid those type of visas where you need to have a physical presence. So and then they will come out with those visas which are paper visa. So generally the most easy format is to have a visit visa. Now employment visa everybody will try to avoid. Then how it will take place? The person will go to visit visa and then take employment there. So it will be shown as he was already existing in that country. It has already started in UAE because they are telling that okay, we will because for UAE you need to go to physically stamp the visa, go to a medical. All those processes will not start immediately because it involves a lot of physical contact. So visa processes after pandemic will undergo a whole lot of change, and you need to deliberate with all the stakeholders because it is a sovereign function of that country to define the visa process. But I think here ILO and all migration forums can contribute because they are in touch with everybody in the informal forum. So what are the basically requirements of, and what are the so I mean to say the real because of the pandemic requirement, the what we will be not able to capture the real immigrants. It has already started happening in UAE. People are going there and taking employment, so they are not coming into our database. So it's another thing that we need to have a strong deliberations in the type of visa and the visa processes to avoid the physical interface. And then now fourth is now, as you know, 13 countries government of India is having air bubble agreement. Few more countries are under pipeline. So what are the air bubble agreements? What are basically what type of visas are allowed? How do you book the flights? What are the companies available? That also awareness is very less. Nobody basically knows what are the air bubble agreements. So these are all in the ecosystem. It needs to be the awareness needs to be created, and then uh, over and above everything, the health protocols, how to behave in a basically how the immigrant is expected to basically follow the protocols at airport. How do he go to a visa center? After that, when he goes to the factory, so he needs to have a basic idea of the COVID-19 precautions. So there we need to either have an online COVID module at PDOT because physical PDOT are not going to start soon. So at least though, and once international flights, immigrants will immediately start going. At least from your side, you can have an online PDOT module, download them, ask them to download in their mobile, and then take a it will create some awareness. And then the most critical thing I have been raising in various forums, that none of the health policy today what undergo immigrants takes cover COVID-19 because all the policies are basically accidental death cover policies under the workplace. So it does not cover pandemic, and already we have got around 20-25 cases of immigrant dying due to COVID, and they were not given any basically compensation, death compensation, because it is not covered under the existing PBBY. So all we need to start deliberations or and those existing health insurance companies who are ready to offer, we need to take cover them because that is very important. And without health policy, I think we should not send the immigrant, and health policy covering COVID. And then another very important point, that is I have been getting requests from recruiting agents that sir, if you have got a database of how many immigrants that have returned from Saudi Arabia or want to return to from Saudi Arabia, those who have not returned or those who have raised complaints, So we will redeploy them in Saudi Arabia. We have got requirement from industries, those who want to take people who are existing already staying there. So although a lot of government of India is also doing a lot of efforts in e-migrate, and then also another basically during Vande Bharat mission also the capturing was done, and that database is also there. But I personally feel that this database is going to be very dynamic, and if you prepare it in a very formal manner, it's going to be changed by the time you use it. So some sort of a informal sort of a database on the sharing basis, because you all will be requiring. So suppose some recruiting agent has got a complaint of 58 people wanting to come back from UAE to India, he can share it on a platform. Another person who has got a requirement of 58 people, he can take it. So rather than bringing them back and again then sending them, so this can be some suggestions can come from our side. Whatever interventions are required, I will try to do. But these are some points that is actually happening on the ground, and daily I am getting requests on that. And then once international flights starts, what will be the basically, because ticketing ecosystem has also been affected a lot. Many companies have gone basically into red. So how the ticketing system, credit lines were previously, a lot of credit lines used to operate, and then so that also needs to be, that is not basically deliberated at all. So ticketing also, once international flights starts, what will be the costing of ticketing, what will be the, how the whole ticketing ecosystem operates after post COVID, that also will affect the cost of the migration. So that also needs to be deliberated among you post COVID. And then this is a specific issue to the GCC countries. Post COVID, what will be the role of GAMCA medical centers, whether they will be basically accommodating or reinventing themselves to bring the COVID effect into their testing and all, how it will be done, because already people are going to non-medical immigrants are also going. So because they are very less in number, this issue has not cropped up. So once people start going to in bulk, issues will be have to be taken up. So all these issues basically is there. So these are some very few points. I mean to say, I'm not basically, it should not be taken as something as a POE I'm speaking. I have given some informal suggestions, and these basically needs to be started at some point. Somebody should start take a lead in sharing of lot of information needs to be shared. Otherwise, by the time you expect the data comes to you, it will be of no use. So some fast decisions needs to be taken among you. A lot of collaborations. It should be a collaborative exercise. Post COVID, it needs to be a collaborative exercise among all the stakeholders. So thank you. I think I've already taken more than 10-15 minutes. So any other points, Amit, or I think other panelists can take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Sausab. Sorry, we're having I think we had to unmute because of that one person who came in. So it's difficult to unmute ourselves. But Sausab, thank you so much. And what you've stated actually is going to unfortunately be the new reality. I think things are set to get tougher in terms of logistics. And I've made some notes also, which, we will definitely take this up in after the session and in the next session as well, which is around the health protocols, the air ticketing challenges, and of course the visa challenges are the main issue. Here in this audience, we are all in one ecosystem, and we can figure out how to help each other. But I don't know if Dubai is going to give e-visas on my mobile anytime soon. I'm not sure they're going to make it so simple. But thank you, Saab. Very unique and very nice perspectives. I request you please hold on as towards the end. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions for you. Next, I'd like to call on my friend Ashit Mehta. And topically, Ashit is actually going through a large exercise right now, and I think he's facing some of these mobilization challenges. Rohini, if we could unmute Ashit, please.
Yes, we've done so.
Yeah, please, over to you, Ashit.
Oh, thank you, Amit. Thank you, everyone. Where do I start? Well, Mr. Sahu has covered a lot of points which I was going to talk about, so I'll be brief now. In terms of, I'll talk about requirements. As a recruiting agent, for the last 3 or 4 months, we didn't see any movement as such in terms of inquiries or asking for availability, etc. But in the last month and a half, we have seen some movement in that direction. And in fact, we have some possible deployment in September for Doha and maybe for UAE very soon thereafter. And we have like scheduled kind of requirements right up to January, February next year. Now, having said that, we need to have an understanding of all the procedures. And Mr. Sahu said there has to be protocols which have to be established, country-to-country protocols. Now, there have been some air bubbles already formed, but we need to understand what those bubbles say or talk about. We also need, as Mr. Sahu said, dedicated websites giving information, live information, not only of Gulf countries, but countries all over the world. And so, have 2 websites, one international travel, both outgoing and incoming, and one within states, because a lot of movement would happen within states also. So air travel would happen from Bangalore to Bombay and then Bombay onward. So we need to understand state to state COVID related information also. COVID as such will last, I think, whole of this year and maybe almost till half or till end of next year. So all these protocols have to be established now, which they have to be long lasting. They have to last at least a year or so. I feel the government should also establish dedicated or certified COVID testing laboratories, which are on an international scale and which would give you a certificate with a photo identity attached or with a passport attached or your Aadhaar card attached, which will be recognized anywhere in the world. So I think that if that happens along with the country recognition, then a lot of movement can easily take place. And also there should be center state protocols for departing workers. So if a person is leaving from his hometown and comes to Bombay or Delhi to take further departure, there has to be an established protocol. So there is no stoppages for him anywhere in between. In terms of Mr. Sahu talked about insurance, but I would like to take that one step further, and I would link COVID. I would like to add COVID insurance to the tickets itself. When you buy an international ticket, COVID insurance should be part of that ticket. Airlines collect a lot of surcharges besides the basic fare. So adding a cost of a small cost of 150, 200 rupees COVID insurance in international tickets, it will not be much, and it would cover everybody. So irrespective of where you travel, you are covered. So that would be an added thing. COVID should also be added to the Pravasi Bharati Bima Yojana if they can't add it to the airline ticket. The other thing is that a lot of companies now, initially in the last first 3-4 months, all the companies were engaged in repatriating some people because they had excess people or the contracts were expiring or the visas were expiring. So a lot of people did come back on the one-day Bharat flights once they started. But now there is a reverse kind of trend. You can only have so many interviews on Zoom or IMO or on the phone or on the screen. So people need to be physically seen face-to-face interviews have to take place, trade testing has to take place. So again, protocols, I mean, the government, MEA has to establish protocols that how these things will take place. I mean, right now, if you want to go to Chennai, you cannot do interviews anywhere, or we don't even know what the protocols are, whether some people can gather for interviews or not. Nothing is clear. Whereas whether inter-district travel is possible within a state, we have no idea. That's about all. There is talk about the new migration bill which is coming, which hopefully would be good. But again, on one hand, I mean, the government talks about protecting the migrants and also recognizing the agents. But in the bill, I mean, there are a lot of penal actions against recruiting agents, which are like in criminal in nature. So I don't know why the government would want to put criminal procedures in the bill rather than keeping civil procedures. So as far as the immigration bill is concerned, I think the government should look at that. Besides that, I don't think I have anything else to add. So thank you, and if there are any questions later, I'll take them up.
Thank you so much, Ashit Bhai, for also keeping that short and sweet. One quick question, you're going through this process right now of mobilizing these hundreds of workers. Who do you think is most qualified, or what do you think is the best way to collect this information into one place? Because clearly no one person has it. Do you have any ideas about that?
I think it will be a collective measure. Like if I would try and get information from, say, Qatar, and if you know people in UAE, you would get it from UAE, Oman. We can get somebody from Saudi Arabia, people who recruit in Saudi Arabia or Bahrain, and we can ask employers to give us that information and what kind of visas they envisage will be issued. Even now, currently, I don't know what visa Doha will issue finally. But there is talk. I mean, they need people, and they would issue some visas, and there would be either a charter flight or some or maybe commercial flight by that time if it opens. So, but we can, I mean, join together and pool in the resources and get the information for different countries and keep updating them.
Okay, so you're saying it would have to be a collaborative effort, and hopefully, the NGOs here, especially ILO and IMN are listening, and maybe this is an initiative they can help, because it will help facilitate the movement of people at the end of the day.
And also state government policies, COVID policies.
Super. Yeah. Thank you so much for that talk, Ashit, and I hope you'll stay around for the Q&A session at the end. Could I next call on my colleague Safwan, who's one of the younger members of our fraternity, has a lot of energy, and I invite him to talk about his experience with medical staff.
Hello, Mr. Amit. Am I audible? Shall we wait for Mr. Saud to join in, or?
No, please go ahead. I think he's with us, but he's just muted himself.
Okay. I would, first of all, good evening, everyone. This is Safwan Yusuf with you. I represent Al Yusuf Enterprises and Safco Skill Academy as CEO. And thank you, IMN, for having me here. And today I will share one small presentation, and for which I will conclude with my suggestion in the end. So I wish to share this presentation.
Yes, Safwanji, you should be able to share. I have any.
Just a second. So here it is. I wish to share this presentation on healthcare recruitment. And to start with, let us analyze first the trend in migration. There are two types of trends where the migration opt for. First is permanent residencies, which we see is basically in the Western countries, African countries, and some part of other Asian countries, where they opt for a permanent residency rather than for a small job. And then second comes, which is widely accepted and practiced by most of our RA, that is contractual work permit, which is widely accepted in the countries like Gulf countries, Middle East, and part of Asian countries. Herewith, it is a time like we need to identify well and then we plan our strategies. Now, let us start with the contractual demand. Contractual demand are basically more of project driven demand, and these are limited, forecasted for like 2 years or 3 years time. And usually this is basically under budgetary process of any country is announced. Like we learned in Gulf countries, such projects are announced on their national days. So in this case, the budget and projection are generally based on the estimate of new workforce they need to bring in, keeping in mind their nationalized policies. And at the same time, there are certain quotas which sometimes keep certain countries limited to recruit their migrants. And these are highly practiced in the countries like Gulf countries, Middle East, and some part of Singapore and Malaysia as well. Here, the key sectors which are getting explored are basically oil and gas, construction, healthcare, marine, e-commerce, hospitality, facility management, and very importantly, what we are missing it from years are domestic workforce, which I will speak in last. And the measures, I believe, some part which Mr. Sao already covered, like even we at present, we hold demand for around 2,000 odd numbers for coming in only from the countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Oman. These demand are basically under local transfer, where employer are ready to hire the people locally. Here, the good part would be, the migrants who wish to come back after the downsizing or the job loss, they can get a free replacement without spending anything. I will appreciate NSDC has really worked out, and they had come up with a concept of making the skill card like Swades. But see, when they are making it, they are collecting the data post migrants already land here. So, okay, they landed, they have the data, but as of now, as Mr. again said very well, we don't have SOPs. When the recruitment will start, how the migration would be, what is the next step, what is the new normal for the visa process. So under all this, even if we get this, again, the migrant need to bear the ticket cost, this medical cost, even the recruitment fees. So here with 2.0, like with 2.0, e-migrate 2.0, we believe it can link the database on a regular exercise rather than making it at the end when the migrants are back from the employer. This should be a regular exercise, by the mission to accumulate the manpower trend, mapping the demand in the destination countries, as I explained in the number 1 point, and the available manpower and the predicted manpower. See, this will really help us. Like for example, if I go through e-migrate 2.0, as I believe, as made on the points I suggested, being a RA with my expertise, I'll see what is trending and what is the demand I can cater as per my expertise. So I can go and tap those countries rather than going for a world tour, selling my services. So this one thing good can happen. And then now we see long-term planning. This is something, a still virgin market for most of us. Like India being one of the youngest country with the total, like 52% of the total population fall under 25 years, whereas many countries with limited population or aging population, scarcity of skill, in fact, they are inviting migrants. And there is a perception where migrants are stealing job. We see from native born widespread. This is widespread nowadays. Like migrant go and steal the job of locals. But in fact, there is no evidence to support it. This is because the number of job in such economy is not fixed or limited. In fact, migrants have contributed the job growth of local and also increased the demand of the local goods and services. This we can very well see in the industries which are getting explored are healthcare number 1, then agriculture, hospitality, again domestic workforce, then manufacturing, and of course the traditional information technology. That is why we know top 10 CEOs from the top IT companies come from Indian origin. And these are observed, we assume this can be observed and well implemented in the countries like African countries, European countries, Western countries, and some of Asian countries. Here, what measures I believe we can take and we can come up with, we need, again, as per my sub heading, we need a long-term planning to streamline exchange of ideas, create a demand and a process that has to be learned under a common platform. Now, to come on a common platform, Mr. Sao, we would need MEA. We would really need MEA to come and help us. We need MEA to form a delegation, travel to these countries, inviting RA as a part of delegation, to participate in a manpower and skill conferences. This will really help us to promote and develop a safe migration in these virgin countries. I have a small case study to share with you on the precise topic what I had chosen: surge in demand for healthcare workforce post COVID-19. India, we all know, is an aggressive player basically, and in the healthcare recruitment. But in the international market, we had seen Philippines still continue to be the leader in supply of nurses. India, though it is emerging as an important source of country with well-trained English speaking nurses, but official figures still, as Mr. Sao again said, we don't have the official numbers still. However, it is reported that 20% of current Indian nursing from school graduates are getting a job abroad. In fact, in Ireland and UK, the number of basically, oh sorry, I missed it. Yeah, in fact, in Ireland and UK, the number of Indian nurses migrant have over to Philippines. And same, we are expecting post COVID-19, the trend is expected in the countries like Gulf, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, in African countries. And very good thing here is, we had also learned that male enrollment in nursing school has been risen to a point where 30 out of 50 students in the class can be men. This is considered, very positive development in a nursing sector. Now this will give a more value as a profession for nursing in India like never before. I really appreciate like MEA has taken well measures to support healthcare recruitment like prior pandemic, but forming state government bodies like NORCA, but they could not streamline and utilize the present available force at that time, even when the demand was threefold that time. So this is the reason I believe MEA, they resume RA for recruitment of healthcare. Sir, I will conclude with my few findings, which I assume can help us in streamlining this process. Number one is, sir, to make the process of FE to raise the demand on e-migrate, it should be very seamless. Unlike other trade and professions, in the healthcare segment, we see the process is very time consuming and it even need an approval by PG. Secondly, sir, how if we can, our training partners, get an accredited by the respective MOH countries, where we can avoid the attestation and later the verification processes. And then when it comes up to RA for screening and evaluation, here when we have such training centers, RA can associate with such training partners and organize the courses assessment for English or maybe the foreign languages in the respective, with the help of the respective MOH, we can even organize the exams here. Also, very recent development, we have seen the national recruitment agencies coming up under the supervision of our PM, Mr. Narendra Modi. So this can be widely accepted. We need a common platform for entrance test for this kind of MOH exams, either with the international bodies or we can even take WHO. Then one thing, sir, this is a little bit tricky, but it can help. Why not start apprenticeship training or co-op program? Like recruiting the students for apprenticeship or co-op program will increase their chances for getting a job for a longer term with those employers. And last but not the least, sir, code of practice. Again, I demand, we need MEA to really help us. This is a very challenging time for us. We need MEA to really support us in a brand building, for building the trust, collaborate with the skill, with the sector skill council, like sector skill council fall under the National Training Development Council and all. And we need to maintain a quality. We need to show, we need to build a strong bilateral relationship in promoting Indian skill and recognition. Sir, we are still called RA. Why not we brand RA with something like International Recruitment and Skill Promoters of India, where the name itself defines what we are going to contribute. By this, sir, I rest my talk. I believe this can help us somehow in future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Safan, for that very passionate speech. I'm sure Sausab is taking a few notes okay, under the cover of his blank screen right now. So I think, we will, this is a common theme, and I hope that the IMN takes note of this for the policy also. I think, all the agents have been saying that we need to move from protection to promotion. I think but the time has come when we need to be promoting our immigrants more than protecting them. And I don't know how and when that will be incorporated, but that's something we will all fight for, Safwan. And thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Next, just moving on, I'd like to call on our friend Sita. She's, I believe, dialed in from a small town in Uttarakhand, where she's been she's remaining safe and doing a lot of research on Europe, which I think is very interesting and even good for all of us RAs to learn. So Sita, if you could please come in.
Thank you, Amit, and thank you, IMN, for this. It's good to be with the practitioners, you know, the people who are on the ground who know their practical stuff. So I'm the only one here who's not from the practical space, huh? But just to, I'm going to try and, I'm going to talk about Europe, right? Because I think this is the new space. I'm not going to talk so much about COVID in a sense, because I still think we don't know what that's going to do to the markets. It's really not clear. So I think we have to hold on to that thought. I'm going to still give you a longer term perspective of what I understand and what I have gathered from the information that we've been seeing. So just to put things a little bit in perspective and picking up also from what Safwan was saying, you know, as a country, we've traditionally been going to the Gulf in very large numbers, and we've seen a lot of Indians go there, but that market is changing. And we don't exactly know how it's changing maybe, but it's not going to absorb the kind of numbers that we've been sending all these years, perhaps. So the idea of looking for a new market is probably the right time. We have a lot of young people in this country, as we know, and we do need to look at where these people will go. I mean, we're looking at like 60 million by 2030. Yeah? So we're looking at large numbers of people who will join our workforce. But I just want to help also, I mean, I just want to take a step into Europe now. And really, I don't know how, you know, Europe is the largest region for migrants. So it absorbs the largest number of migrants in the world as a region, no? Because there are so many countries. But only 6% of them are Indians. So we have a very small percentage there. And the average intake on an annual basis is close to about 200,000 or so. But half of them are for family reunification. So we are only sending about 100,000 plus who are going as workers and going on a first, you know, permit of residence. So if we look at that scenario, so you have India, you have all these young people, you have Europe, which is a destination, but we're a very, very small part of that migration story there. But we have to look at Europe and also understand that it is going through a demographic transition. So there is going to be a lot of aging. The workforce is shrinking, and it's shrinking quite dramatically. So they're going to see much lesser numbers. They will not be able to keep up with the economic growth if they do not actually take in migrants. It is not a choice. They are stuck, to be honest. No matter the level of transition to technological advancements and everything, they're still going to need people to fill those gaps. And they know this, by the way. So it's not like Europe is not aware or Europe has not been thinking ahead. So if you look at their projections, they've been looking at, you know, where is our labor market going? Where is our population going? And it all points to the fact that they're going to need, I don't know what the numbers will look like, because I think this is very hard predictions, but the workforce is falling. And so they may look at about 12 or 15 million that they may need to look at by 2030, right? That's the shortage in the workforce. And that's a large number. And like I said, we're a very small percentage of it. But amongst the countries that do go to Europe, we are the third largest in terms of first permit receivers. So it's not like there are many other takers who are filling those gaps up either, right? And Europe has been reaching out to India. There is a strategic partnership in place. There is a dialogue on migration that takes place, which is what we are involved in. And all of this points to the fact that there is openness to look at migration more comprehensively. And a large part of that, of course, includes talent mobility and includes, you know, attracting talent from India to Europe. So India is certainly a potential country. This is where it's going to go. So this is where we need to put ourselves together and start thinking of how we will get to that market. In terms of, you know, there's going to be, it's not very easy to crack through this, which is why the earlier points like Safwan was saying, or even Amit, it's going to need a coming together. It's going to need a collaboration and cooperation with governments, with private sector, with social sector, everyone coming together, because I don't think you can crack through these markets without that. I think going on your own as, recruiters, or I don't think you can go very far. I think you can go to some point, and some of you definitely are. But I think there's going to be some point that you're going to hit blocks. And one of the ways to clear those blocks is to go together with the governments, with, getting the private sector together. And I think this is going to be pretty important for India to do if we want to look at the market. I do know that NSDC is moving forward with that, and they have tried to collaborate with a lot of you, but it's going to be a collaboration that is going to need all the forces to come together. Each one on their own, I don't think you can crack through the European market. The numbers are huge. The sectors are manifold, by the way. So, and it's, and the information is all there. This is what is so great about Europe. They do put the information out in public domains. So while they may tell you that, like I can tell you right now, the shortage occupations in Europe, right now, as in 2019, what they ended with, what are the top 10, 12 professions. And in those, I find, I'll have to look through my notes because I won't know them. But I do find that while there are a lot of demand for high-skilled workers, and they're saying that 85% of the people that they will need in the future going forward will be people who have high skills. So you're looking at medium to high skills going forward, a lot of it as professionals in the service industry, because that's the growth industry. But 90% of jobs are replacement jobs. So 90% of the jobs are not new jobs, they're replacement jobs, but they're not getting replaced with the same kind of people that were there before. They're going to get replaced with a higher quality person, which basically means someone with digital skills. So even though agriculture, by the way, is going to be the largest replacement sector, but not without technology. So it's not somebody who can go from here who does not have the technology skills to be able to tap into that market for long term. It may happen right now because things are different right now, but not 5 years and 10 years down the line. You will find that person will face severe difficulties if the person is not actually someone who has language skills, who actually has digital skills. So I think we have to remember this. Now, India does have very high graduate numbers coming out. I think we have 10 million a year. So we actually have the population to fill in those gaps. It's the matter of trying to source correctly and understand what the West also needs and what Europe in particular needs. There's a lot of grainy information there. There's a lot of information. So while, they say, okay, you need health workers everywhere, I can tell you Estonia does not need health workers, right? This is information that is available. I know like Czech does not need, I think it was teachers or construction workers or something. So there's different countries that need something and different countries that don't need something. Like I know right now in the construction sector, they're looking at welders, they're looking at metal sheet and welders. I don't even know these jobs. Sorry.
Metal fitters.
You guys know this, right? But when they talk of building and construction, even finishers, they don't need painters. They need drivers, but they don't need car drivers. And all this information is put out there. It's all there for you to see. It's all there for us to analyze, and it's all there for us to plan. The fact remains, it's there for us to be able to take advantage and plan for it. Like I said, Europe has to open. There are no choices. There are no choices. It cannot remain closed. It needs high-skilled workers. It also needs workers who fill some of these spaces. The shortfalls are very large. And in that space, I believe that as a community, as India, we can easily move forward because there's so much out there that we can work together on. I think with that, I can stop. I can give you a little bit more on which countries, numbers, because there's so much out there. But we can, probably go on to that a little bit more later or something. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sita. Very motivating for anyone who's looking at new territories. And, I can tell you a lot of us do need these words of motivation because we need to find new territories. Just a quick question, you've done so much research, where the gaps are, and that, we will need help. So do you have practical suggestions on how we engage with NSDC or with some of the European bodies? Any suggestions would be welcome on that.
Okay, so I think, and we've been talking to NSDC as well. I think one of the things that NSDC really should do is a suggestion that has also come before, which is these kind of go together with RAs to understand the markets there. One of the key groups that we've not looked at is employers, by the way. Employers in Europe are the ones that are going to open the markets, not governments. And employers are very strong in many, many countries of Europe, right, in terms of their advocacy and what they're able to push for, which is why you see Germany opening doors, because the employers are really strong. And the chambers of commerce here and the chambers of commerce there do have linkages. These linkages need to be cemented. These linkages can be strengthened. And some of that could be around the skills that are available in country here. Because remember, I mean, if you look at manufacturing right now, 2019 data I've looked at, I mean, there are countries in who are facing 50% shortages, 50%. You know, they cannot just find the workers they need. Right? This is the auto industry in Italy, for example. They just don't have the workers that they need. And so the fact remains that we need to work with our chambers here who can work with the chambers there as well. There are connections that have been made before, but it might be really good to strengthen those, because having a conversation with employers in destination is going to be key. Without employers, you're not going to get the right information, right? Nobody knows it like the employers. They know what they want. So you've got to get something that links up with employers. And the something that links up with employers is the chambers here, because they do have those linkages. The government will always be a bit shy. The government cannot be in a sense marketing, no? It doesn't work like that. So what works is for a private sector to do it. NSDC, being a private company, could do it. And NSDC should ideally set up one base office in Europe somewhere, if you ask me, and one in Africa. I mean, they really should set up offices. But if they're not doing that, then one of the things to do is go as contingents and go as groups of people, and they could go sectorally. So the top few who work on health, the top few who work on IT. By the way, IT demands are going to come down differently, but they're not going to be as high. So I think you just need to go with different groups and go together with employers who talk to employers. So you need to have employer meetings. And I know that embassies do actually get into conversation with chambers over there as well. So it might be interesting to find those spaces that recruiters can get into as well. That would be my top suggestion, really, to be honest. Yeah, okay, I'll leave it to that.
No, so thank you so much for that, Sita. And it's good that you've mentioned NSDC and Europe and the chambers, because I know that in the audience we have Nauzad, we have Dr. Didar Singh. I saw someone from NSDC as well. And I hope that they're making notes, and I'm sure Rohini and the IMN team will definitely take this up to be brought up in the next session. So thank you so much for that, Sita. Moving on, I'd like to call on my friend Ali. Ali looks younger than he is. He's got over 20 years experience, and I'll leave it to him to please talk about his industry.
Thank you, Amit, and thank you to India Migration for giving me this opportunity to speak today. It's been a wonderful hour speaking about a lot of issues which affect us, and it's nice to hear from different parties and different organizations who are being represented here. A lot has already been said from what I wanted to say, so I'm just going to keep it very brief. So, what now? What is the future? I think that's the most important thing for us to discuss. It feels like we are in a brand new world, just born today, no experience. Forget about the past. It's all about what's going to happen in the future. So thinking about the future and talking about the future, I think most importantly, whatever we do today, whatever we decide in the next couple of weeks as organizations, as government, is going to be very, very crucial for the survival of our industry, the recruitment industry. I am from the hospitality industry, and I know that we've been hurt really, really bad. Yeah, I mean, it's been absolutely crazy. I mean, it's even, difficult to comprehend the amount of damage which has been done to the hospitality industry. So going into the future, I mean, thankfully, last couple of days has been, it's been kind of very interesting. We've seen certain green shoots and activity at resorts in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, in UAE. Thanks to the IPL, all the resorts showing very high occupancy in UAE in September, October, and November. Resorts in UK are doing extremely well. some in Saudi Arabia. So there are certain green shoots in that industry. And what we also are seeing is that there is likely to be a lot of demand coming up from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the largest GCC country, and they are heavily reliant on manpower from Asia and India. So I think going into the future, we must focus on things. We have spoken about e-migrate, MRW, and lots of other issues. So what we need to do is we need to bank on our strengths. Our strengths being quick mobilization, so we can get people on board quickly. Our strength is competitive salaries. We need to focus on that. So these kind of issues, which will put us ahead of other manpower recruiting countries who are also trying to get back into the game, trying to get as much as opportunity to deploy workers of their nationalities. So that's it. Yeah, we need to look into the future. There are good signs, and with the support from the government, reinstating of flights, creating air bubbles. So the air bubbles is a great place to start. I mean, it has given some hope for people to be deployed to UAE and Qatar. However, there is no sign of the biggest GCC country in the negotiations for the upcoming Vande Bharat 6. So I would like that Saudi Arabia be put on priority because that will give us the numbers we are looking for. And then, of course, we always have a wish list for the government. And this is something very close to me. I have been trying to focus on this for quite some time. And the most important thing I feel right now is that a lot of agencies are very vulnerable. They have financially been affected very heavily. So carrying the onus of responsibility of the worker for after deployment, okay, for several issues. Yeah, of course, we do our best to vet the employers. We do, make sure that we don't want any problems once the worker has arrived in the host country. But even having done all that, there is times when candidate is medically unfit. We have no control over that. I mean, he's gone to a Gamka medical center, arrives in, say, Saudi Arabia, and he's medically unfit. The doctor takes no responsibility. The Gamka center, who charges a bomb, 5,500 rupees for medical, which is totally unjustifiable. So all the responsibility falls on the agency. That is the departure ticket, the return ticket, visa cost, and of course, the worker is the one which is affected the most, and we don't have any control. So what we want to do is we want to see the Parivarsi Bharatiya Bima being expanded to cover these areas like homesickness, medically unfit, illegal or whatever, termination of employment. So we don't mind paying a higher insurance premium, but if these things need to be covered by insurance. So that is one very, very important aspect, which I would like that we all try to sort of see how we can get it implemented. The other being the registration of workers, whether it is ECR, ECNR, everybody needs to be registered in e-migrate. We all know that data is crucial, it's critical. And if we don't capture the data of, let's say, 60-70% of the people being deployed, it doesn't make any sense. Also, where is the protection for them then? So I would say they must have compulsorily have Bima insurance. They must compulsorily register in e-migrate before they can leave from an international airport in India. So that is another point. Then we have the issue of bank guarantee, which is placed by the agencies with the government to cover the license fees. So, which is about 50 lakhs right now. Now, although the bank guarantees are there and people are trying, and there is proposals to withdraw half the bank guarantee, keep half the bank guarantee. What we'd like to see is, instead of the bank guarantee, we place an insurance cover for the 50 lakh amount. So when the government and the workers are still protected, they have the indemnity from the agency, and the agency gets the liquidity from the bank guarantee amount placed with the banks. Yeah, that's pretty much, there's lots of other issues, but I think we have run over time. So I'm just going to close and say thank you, everybody. And thank you for having me on this webinar. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ali. I was hoping you'll bring up the insurance topic. That's your favorite innovation. It's also one question that we have received. So I'll quickly just throw that to you, even though we are not in Q&A. Is what are the practical suggestions of how we can actually split the liability between the candidate and the RA? I know that you've done a lot of working on this. Do we actually have involvement from the IRDA? Have we actually made a specific proposal to the PGE on this?
We are working on it. I mean, how do you split? It would then again depend on the reason for repatriation. So, I mean, where we see that there is the candidate has really not had anything to do with it, then he should not only be repatriated free of cost or by the insurance, but also be given a compensation to pay for to cover the fees and other medical expenses and other things which he's incurred while before departure.
Okay, fair enough. I think this requires a much larger discussion, but definitely, I know we have made a couple of formal submissions on this also. If we could share that with the IMN team, so that maybe that's something they can take up on Monday. Thanks so much, Ali. I know that we are already over time, so I'm just gonna add my 2 bits to the conversation. Just taking a step back, also in summary of what everyone's been talking about. COVID's really been, for want of a better word, it's been a game changer, right? It's changed the entire game in so many industries, and any industry which is related to movement of people, unfortunately, and our industry is bang in the center of it, is very adversely affected, right? And some of the larger trends, unfortunately, we haven't even recognized yet. And I'd like to just spell out 2 or 3 of them, because these are long-term changes. One is the fact that, a lot of jobs require social distancing. A lot of them are moving to work from home. And a lot of them are being automated. The process of automation has actually accelerated during this time and not the other way around. With the result that a lot of jobs will actually be lost very, very strategically in the future. And this is not just, most people think automation is related to IT or it's related to BPO. Fact of the matter is that we now need less welders because there are automated welding machines, right? We actually need less carpenters because now they do form work. If anyone who's doing recruitment for construction knows this, that earlier everything was cut according to specs, but now, there's ready-made form works which actually comes out. Simple thing like a rebar technician, earlier they would actually fabricate the rings. Today the rings come fabricated. So, the automation is actually reducing the requirement of workers. And the only way, we can remain in the game or continue doing the same numbers is by increasing productivity of our workers. And that comes back to, the cliche of, with due apologies, the cliche of skilling. But if that can be used to increase productivity of our workers, then it would serve the purpose that's needed. Because especially Europe, that, for example, Sita talked about, they expect the worker to finish their work in 8 hours. They do not encourage overtime, right? So, if someone has to complete their work in 8 hours, and they have hire and fire policies, it's not like the Middle East where, there's a support network, and over a period of time, certain adjustments have been created in their HR systems where they tolerate or downgrade employees. That doesn't exist in the new world, unfortunately. Localization is definitely something that's happening. It's something we need to keep a lookout for, especially in manufacturing. A lot of countries are de-risking their supply chains, moving them to onshore. And those manufacturing companies will actually be built in the countries. And one big thing that's happening even in India, whichever businessman we talk to, and if I take a poll of my friends here, everyone would have reduced salaries. No one's talking about increasing salaries. When your top line, your revenues have decreased by 30%, you are as employers also looking to reduce salaries. Or at the very least, you're trying to create variable salaries. So variable salaries based on performance. Our MRW, for example, takes no cognizance of this. But I can promise you that, as soon as the numbers of recruitment starts, this is something which is going to be part of the new compensation systems that employers will offer. And, if other countries accept it, we will also, unfortunately, need to accept these. So these are some of my limited points, which are larger in nature. In terms of industry, I do quite a bit of recruitment in oil and gas, and the good news there is that there are current requirements. As long as oil hopefully remains above $30, I think refineries will keep running. Maintenance of refineries will be needed, and maintenance of refineries itself requires thousands of workers per year. And there is current demand right now, and this demand is consistent, it's uniform. But right now, for the next month or two, we really need help to create the clarity around the rules and the procedures that are needed. And I think that is something that Sausab started off with. Ashit has also put it very eloquently. We really need to get our act together. I don't think the government alone can help us out with this. We'll really need to come up with some collaborative solution where we can pool the information together. This is something I would encourage everyone on this platform to think about, as to how do we come up with a way to dynamically update information. Because it's not just putting up a website where information is put up once. We need ticketing agents to update travel rules. We need medical centers to update health rules. We require, recruitment companies and embassies to actually update visa procedures. It has to be a multifaceted task force, and maybe this is one of the issues we can take up on Monday. With that, I would like to bring the panel discussion part of this to an end. I would like to thank all the speakers for their time, and I think this has been an excellent conversation, very varied. I would like to now ask Rohini how she would like to take up the Q&A questions.
Yes, I don't think we have a whole lot of time. So perhaps I can request, so what we've actually done, what many of you may have noticed, is that during the session, I have been sending the moderator some of the questions as well. And I think we've covered many of the questions as well within the session. I think Prakash perhaps is the only person whose question we have not covered.
So Prakash is asking, when workers reach out to registered RAs, they say no jobs are available, but they turn to local and informal agents with higher prices. How can we ensure that workers are able to contact RAs directly?
We can just request Prakash to ask his question. If he, Prakash, if you can unmute yourself, you'll be able to do so now.
Yeah, so thank you, Rohini. Yeah. Exactly, I think Amit has already spoken out the question that I said. Is largely we are working in UP and Bihar, and we often find that, a complaint coming from a worker saying that when we try to reach out all those 31 recruitment registered agents in Bihar, or they often get a response that saying that we don't have a job. Whereas the same person is reached out by the local agents who is from the nearby village and offering the same job with a higher price. And that's the issue, and would like to take an input that how really this can be handled, as to how we being a agency who is working directly with the migrant workers can really guide them appropriately so that they reach out to registered agents and goes through a safer channel.
I don't know how I can answer this. This can be a whole panel discussion in of itself, Prakash, to be honest with you. So simple answer is that, I think the agents that you see on the screen here, honestly, we have all given almost 50 lakhs to the government of India. And, as guarantee of our performance, right? And we are compliant and answerable for everything that we do. Challenge is, how do we sitting in Mumbai or Delhi reach a candidate in a small village outside of even Gorakhpur? That really is a challenge. The good news is, and I'd like my colleagues to also pitch in, the good news is that I think social media is one of the ways in which at least accurate information is now reaching workers. I just want to share with everyone here that we had put up a live feed of this seminar on our Ambe International Facebook page, and we've had almost 20,000 views already. So everyone seeing this knows the names of the agencies who have participated. Hopefully they'll go and reach out to them, and that's one way we solve the problem. The second way is that, a lot of agencies have tried to set up offices in different states, but the local rules, bureaucracy, and even the politics makes it very hard for us to continue with that. It's a short answer that I'd like to give. Ashit or Ali, if you want to answer that also. Sausab, if you have anything to say on this. We'll have to unmute Sausar, Rohini.
Yes, just give me a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, his basic idea was to know that how the recruiting agent is putting up his vacancies in a transparent manner. So officially, the answer is that every recruiting agent is having should compulsorily have his website, and all the vacancies for which he is recruiting should be updated on that website. And most of the reputed recruiting agencies are dynamically updating their website. So all the immigrants basically should, rather than depending upon some fake WhatsApp forwards or some sort of Facebook pages or some sub-agents, unauthorized sub-agents, they should go and directly check the website of the recruiting agent. So if they are not finding the data updated in if their website, and if they are found recruiting, they can send a mail to the POE. That is my official answer. Thank you.
Can I come in?
Please, Sita, please.
I've been getting a lot of calls from Gorakhpur, of course, over these last couple of months. So just to say, I've always given the message back that the flights are not running, so things are not open, and please check back with the RAs who you work with. Because the fact is, a lot of these sub-agents do work with some of you, do work with the RAs, and they don't have the information, to be honest. They're on the ground there. And a lot of them know, but a lot of them want to try also, no, because they want to try. So I think the fact remains that if this information can keep going back, saying flights are not open, things are not happening, we are not going to take them. So even if you're going to keep trying, things are not going to work. I think there will be more messaging that goes backwards. I've been getting calls constantly saying, when is it opening? What is happening? I'm like, how do I know? But please ask the RAs who will know, So I think there's this thing of also passing a lot more messages to these sub-agents. I know there's hundreds of them, but it might be to just get that message across a lot more often than is going out right now. Just my 2 bits.
Thank you so much for that, Sita. Officially, I would like to state that no RAs on this panel use sub-agents. So, I would like to just make sure that that's stated by us. Okay. I think we'll ask the last question to Sausab. Sorry, Sausab, you'll have to unmute yourself one last time. I think the question number one is, as you also stated, a lot of people are going to start traveling on visit visa. And this is going to, I think, lead to more confusion. And it's definitely not a business that's going to happen through the registered RAs. Any ideas you can share on how this can be addressed? Rohini, we'll have to unmute Sausab.
Yeah, he should be unmuted. He's already spoken. Yeah, he should be able to speak now.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
So it's a very, prior to pandemic also, this was a major issue that certain countries are basically trying to bypass the whole immigration process by asking the workers on visit visa and then converting into employment visa. And UAE of late, in the last 1 year, basically they have been officially doing that. They were basically even conducting the recruitment process in UAE by calling the immigrants on visit visa. So it has been basically and the one of the formal ways to take up with the country-to-country forums, and already MEA has been taking up with UAE in all the forums, in all the available platforms. But that always remains their sovereign function. But one of the practical methods that we were able to check this issue with Saudi Arabia was when last year, if you remember, at the immigration check post at the BOI, Bureau of Immigration, when the person, the immigrant is returning. See, once he goes to visit visa, convert his visit visa to employment visa, that time the neither the e-migrate is updated nor the immigration database is updated at the BOI. So once he comes back, even on a holiday, so then he can be caught that okay, your although your passport is stamped as an employment visa, but in our system you have gone on a visit visa, you should have come back in 3 months. So that time, what we had done in basically last year, BOI has done a exercise. All those returning from Saudi Arabia, not on employment visa, was they were stopped at the airport and they were asked to get them regularized. So a large amount of applications came. Then they basically got themselves registered with us. So that if nothing is fruitful, all those efforts, then we can do with those exercises at major airports. That when they return, then we can catch hold of them. That is one practical way of doing, but that is not a correct way. The correct way is to take it up with country to country forums. But that this will increase definitely. Now already we have started getting complaints.
Thank you, Sausab. I think Ali also wants to say something. Rohini, if we could just unmute him, please.
Yes, of course. I think Ali and Shabri as well would like to say something, and then
Please.
This is just a suggestion. If it can be, instead of what Sausab said that we catch them when they return, what if the employer raises a demand, short-term demand, and we do the immigration process or register them in e-migrate and send them, so that at least we have the data and the agent bears the responsibility.
Super, Ali. Did Shabri also want to chip in, Rohini?
Yes, Shabri, you should be able to speak now.
Thanks, Amit. Yep. Thanks, Rohit. Thanks, Amit. Right. I'm really struck by this conversation. Amit, I think you are a fantastic moderator. Your smile just covers up for everything else that goes on. I really like your official and your unofficial versions to most of these things. But here's my thing, and I think if I don't mention this as somebody who's worked on policy for all this time and as an ILO representative, I think I would be remiss if this is not mentioned. One of the things that I find very industry has to play such an important role in the broader perspectives on migration, particularly in the case of our country, which is such a labor migration focused country. What I don't think we should do is move from protection to promotion. I don't certainly condone that particular idea. And I think if we go along those lines, the issues that we are seeing now will actually only be exacerbated. Recruitment agencies will come more under the scanner. So I would try and make sure that the human rights framework, the labor rights angle of this conversation and on this discourse remains alive and kicking. If we don't do that, I have a feeling we may actually be dialing back rather than looking forward. I'll stop there, but thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Shabri. We could talk on that for another 20 minutes, but unfortunately, I think we're out of time. I want to thank the entire panel for taking out time. Sausab, Shabri, Sita, Safan, Ali, Ashit Bhai, for joining us. And Rohini, over for you for the concluding remarks. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will keep this extremely short. We have already overshot extensively. So thank you to everyone again for joining us, especially to each of our speakers, to Sita, to Shabri, to Mr. Sao, as well as to all the representatives from the recruiting fraternity, Mr. Mehta, Mr. Sheikh, as well as Mr. Rajan. Thank you, Amit, for your excellent moderation. to not just the international migration ecosystem right now, to its future, to the problems that the fraternity is facing right now, to how, very practically speaking, we will continue recruitment within the COVID space. And we're really hoping to keep this conversation going in the second session. I would just like to end with letting you all know that we have a day 2 of this, where we will be taking this conversation forward. We'll be talking specifically about skilling. We will be talking about new corridors, particularly Europe. We'll be talking about the Far East as well. We'll be talking about the Gulf. And we really encourage you to join in with us on that day as well. Thank you very much.